All right, good morning. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Happy New Year, by the way. We are going to be talking this morning about nonfiction research, nonfiction and reading for research. And we're going to talk about writing and writing feature articles and doing some research in feature articles. So first and foremost, I want to let you know that the dates of these units, it begins on the 29th, the reading unit does, and that is the day after the reading benchmark. So it's a good way to kind of start something new after the benchmark and get kids reading a little bit differently and choosing some different books. The writing feature articles unit starts a little bit earlier. That one starts on January the 21st. So that's about a week before the reading benchmark, and so you'll be getting going with that before the benchmark. So those are the dates for the units. I wanted to highlight some of the Readingtekes that you need to be aware of when you're teaching this nonfiction unit. And I know that we've done reading nonfiction earlier in the year, but as you know, especially with third graders, sometimes one time through isn't enough. And so their little brains have grown and they've developed and matured over the year. And so this is a good kind of second go around with nonfiction, and you're going to be able to go a little bit deeper with them. So one of the ones I want you to be aware of, besides A, which is facts and details, that support the main idea, and B, which is drawing conclusion, is C, identify explicit cause and effect relationships among ideas in the text. So get them to be thinking about the cause and effects. And 13D was a big one that we had a little difficulty with last year on the STAR. It's using text features to locate information and make and verify prediction about contents of text. And that's a big one. You know, we're getting past just having them say, okay, this is the glossary, this is the index, you know, I know what a caption is. We need to go a little bit deeper with it. And we'll talk about it more in just a minute, but be thinking during your teaching and during your small strategy groups about how you can call their attention to those text features and what kind of information is in those text features, how to read them, and how it kind of goes along with the text and supports the text. So really kind of put a star by 13D and put your focus there during this nonfiction reading unit. I also wanted to call your attention to some of the question stems that you need to be practicing during this part of nonfiction. Which sentence from the selection best supports the idea? This is a doozy. They have a hard time with this one, y'all, so we need to be practicing this one over and over and over again. And the first way that you need to be doing this is in your modeling. So during a read aloud, or during the mini lesson, or during your small strategy groups, or conferring, stop and ask students and use these exact words. You know, say, hey, which sentence from the selection or what you are reading supports the idea that we should recycle? Or which sentence from this chapter best supports the idea that, you know, frogs are good for the environment, or whatever it is that they're reading about. But start using these stems so they are used to hearing them. Also, if you don't have a chart up in your room somewhere with these question stems, get them up so that the students can see them and they're used to seeing them written out like this, and they know what it means. A lot of kiddos have a hard time because they don't even know what the question is asking them. They can't even get through the question part, more or less get to the answers. And so we need to make sure that they read these words and understand what it's asking. Another one is, what can the reader conclude from the information? Make sure that they understand what that means. What does it mean when it says the reader can conclude? You say, you know, readers, this means, you know, what do you think? Now that we've read this, what can you conclude about this? What do you know now? What is the section titled, and whatever the section is, mainly about? We need to be practicing main idea of the selection, but we also need to make sure that we're practicing just certain, you know, parts of the reading. So don't be afraid to take, you know, just a paragraph or a portion of their reading and have them tell you what it's mainly about. Also, there was a diagram on last year's STAR test that helped them complete the diagram. It was more of a cause and effect, and they did okay with that one. as far as the statistics from Sci-Fair went, but it's a good thing to try. And don't always just do a box with an arrow. Make it a circle with arrows and make it a squiggly mark, and get them used to seeing graphic organizers with just different shapes, just so that they are ready for that. I also wanted to remind you that on the STAR test that was released, the story behind the crunch is the expository. So if you want to pull that story out, look at it, go through the questions, and get yourself kind of familiar with that, that'll help you with your teaching of nonfiction. I wanted to just call your attention to the Genre Connections book by Tanny McGregor. You probably have one on your campus somewhere. If you don't have it in your classroom, ask your IS. Maybe they can help you locate it. There's a whole chapter on nonfiction, and she does a really great job of introducing nonfiction with a think aloud when she's reading the back of a seed packet. And, your third graders have, like I said before, already been in nonfiction. We've done it this year. They've done it last year in second grade. I mean, they're familiar with it. But now you have to get them into the thinking part of it more. And this is just a great example of how you can model reading some nonfiction. So she gets herself a seed packet, and she does this think aloud where she's talking about, like, oh, wow, look, there's this little tiny seed packet. It's only 3 inches big, but there's text, and there's images, and there's a map, and there's a map key on it, and I'm gonna read this and figure this out. And, oh my goodness, I noticed that there's a colored picture, and these beans look like you're putting them in the ground, and it even is telling you how deep to put it. So she goes through this whole process of reading and thinking aloud. And beforehand, she just has her class notice. She says, just listen to me explain this, or think about this, and then I want you to tell me what you noticed. And so after she goes through it, they make an anchor chart of her thinking. So it's not, what did they know? There was a map and there was a map key. No, that's not it. This is all about how you think when you're reading nonfiction. So you can see, one of them was she jumped from one section to the other. That's how we read nonfiction. And that's okay. So they need to know that. She used thinking strategies. She used her schema. Oh, well, I know these are seeds, and making inferences. She used pictures, maps, and the symbols. She learned a lot of new information in a small amount of text. They need to know that, hey, when you're reading nonfiction, that author is going to get right to it and tell you something that they want you to learn about it while you're reading. So I just thought that this was a great idea for an introduction to the nonfiction again, because they're all going to be familiar with it. And this is kind of taking it deeper. And then you could put this anchor chart up and remind them of what their thinking should be and how their reading should be when they're grabbing a nonfiction text, just so that they understand that they read it differently than they read it when they're reading fiction. So this is an idea for you. And again, it's Tanny McGregor. By the way, she's coming to Houston in a couple of weeks. And so if you wanted to do some research on the Heinemann website, she is coming to Houston and going through this book. It would be a great professional development for you if you're interested. Also, one of the things we need to make sure is that you are just, filling your room with nonfiction. And there are some just outstanding nonfiction books for children that's out there besides the ones that you've got. And so I just want to encourage you to go through your cabinets, go through the closets, look at home, ask parents, get those nonfiction books out and onto the tables, into your library, all over your room, so that the students are having opportunities to be reading nonfiction and are practicing that. A couple ideas about the checkpoint, the nonfiction checkpoint that you'll have. Some things you want to be thinking about as you're teaching. One of the things is what do readers do when the author uses hard to read or fancy words, especially proper nouns? We know that a lot of our ELL kids have difficulties when they run into words that they don't know and they can't decode. And proper nouns, what do? And how do you not shut down and stop reading just because you can't figure out a word? And I'll have to tell you, the checkpoint that's coming for nonfiction has, the scientific name of an animal at the very beginning of the selection. But then students need to know how to decipher that, call it something else, or call it, the first letter of whatever it is, or look for a clue from the author that says, this is its name, but we call it this. So give them those ideas of how to do that. Again, what sentences support an idea? So I'm really pushing on that one. How to find information from text features, and how to summarize nonfiction. I hate to break it to you, there's no magic bullet about how to summarize nonfiction. There's no, acronym that you can use. It's going to be different every time, but you can give them some tools of how to summarize nonfiction. Get them to understand that there's a main topic, that there's going to be supporting details, and get them thinking about how they're doing their expository writing. How is that the same? And so it's kind of nice that we're doing nonfiction writing at the same time, because you're going to tie those together more. So let me move into that. The research and feature article writing that you're going to be doing, model it. You should have your own feature article that you are writing as they're going through the process. They need to see how you think about it and how you decide on the topics that are going to go into your writing. And so I'd really encourage you, get yourself some chart paper. If you don't want the big giant one, cut it in half and use a half chart paper, or have it in your notebook and use your Elmo or your document camera. But you need to be showing them how you are writing your feature article. Also, talk to your librarian, give her the dates of the session or the unit, and get those books in your classroom that you can get. Also, this is a great opportunity for you to be using the technology that's available to you. If you haven't used Kids InfoBits, talk to your librarian about that, or your IS, and get the kids using that one. Of course, PebbleGo and KidBiz has all of those information. You can go into KidBiz and get nonfiction articles and select those that students can be reading for their research. Also, if you are considering, if you have a group that can do it, think about creating a kid blog at kidblog.org and have them start blogging about their research. Or there's a place on readwritethink.org where they can create their own brochure or kind of their newspaper. And it's really cool if you have some kids who are ready for that and they can move on and be excelled a little bit. Consider using that technology. Again, this is a great opportunity for you to make a connection between the reading and the writing. So as they are reading, you're going to talk about why the author made certain choices in the book, but then during writing, independent writing time, or during your writing workshop time, ask them, say, hey, you're the author. Why did you choose that photo? What is that, graphic help with the writing that you're doing? How does that, how did you decide to use that heading? Is it because that's what you talk about in that paragraph? That's what authors do. So talk to them and make them understand that they are authors of nonfiction also, and it'll help with the reading. Just a couple of quick shout outs. Make sure that you are using Words Their Way. Words Their Way is the district's vocabulary, spelling, and phonics program that we're using. And I put over on the right-hand side, there's some files that you can download. There's an overview and a sorting explanation. So if you would like to kind of refresh yourself of some information about Words Their Way, please download those files. And those of you that are working on Cafe and using Cafe to help you with meeting and conferring with students, I put some nonfiction ideas about Cafe up there so that you have those as a reference for you. I also included up in the files for you to download this PowerPoint, because there were a couple of links in here so that you can use that. And I also included some information about the story behind the crunch, which was on the STAR test last year, and kind of how we did with the types of questions. So that's, of course, as a district, you'll want to think about or ask your IS or admin team about how your students did last year and kind of refresh yourself with that one. But that will get you thinking about nonfiction for the STAR test. Thank you so much, especially those of you that attended live this morning. Make sure that you wrote your name so that I can send you a special gift. And if you ever have any questions about curriculum or anything else that you need, please feel free to email me anytime. I'm here to help and want to help you in your success. So have a great day, everyone. I'm going to hang around for a couple of minutes, but if there's anything you need, let me know. Have a great day.